The USA women's roster for the 2026 VNL is out and the fans are already getting spicy. Yes, it is time for year number 2 of the USA women's rebuild. And I mean, a rebuild is a strong word because most rebuilds don't involve making it to the quarterfinals of the VNL and the World Championships. But when you've got 4 straight medals at the Olympics, that is what a rebuild is. Now, last year, the U.S. went with a very, very young roster for the majority of the 2025 VNL. And, that made a lot of sense. We saw some turnover after the 2024 Paris Olympics, most notably head coach Karch Karai, the absolute GOAT. And with Eric Sullivan coming in as the new head coach, you're expecting to see a lot of new blood, especially with the talented young crop of NCAA athletes we have coming up through the system right now. It's also a really good time to get some new blood in with the U.S. hosting a home Olympics in 2028 in one of the homes of volleyball in LA. Now, because they're hosting the Olympics, that means they've already qualified and there's really no pressure for them to perform this year, much like pretty much every other team on the planet. Things don't really get real for the U.S. until next year with the World Championships when you really start needing to perform. But despite all of that, we are seeing a roster with a lot more depth as we've got some Olympians returning and some of the best players returning to the roster as well. That's exactly what Sullivan had to say about the roster as well. We're excited about this roster and what it represents for our group as we build towards LA 2028. We have 6 Olympians in this group and they will bring invaluable experience and composure to every training session. At the same time, we've got a deep group of athletes who have proven themselves in past VNLs and NORCECA events, and that creates exactly the kind of competitive gym we want. VNL is a grind against the best teams in the world and we'll learn a lot about ourselves, but we believe this roster has the balance, depth, and resilience to take another step forward this summer. Now, before we get into this actual roster, I will say straight up, I am a little less in tune with the NCAA than the above average American fan. Being a Canadian, it actually makes it kind of hard to watch one of the biggest leagues in the world that is just right below us. And it kind of goes the same with LOVB and MLV as well. I'm much more in tune with the international leagues and stuff that's going on in Europe. So I am bringing someone in who knows quite a bit about the USA women's volleyball landscapes. On Wednesday, May 20th, make sure you tune in to this channel where I'm going to be doing a live podcast with Conan, the social media star, and we're going to get into the nitty gritty and I'm going to get him to break down exactly what he thinks about this roster and the moves Eric Sullivan made for the 2026 VNL. If you've got some questions, make sure you tune in live and I think it's going to be a good one. That being said, this is going to be the roster for 2026. In the setter's position, you have Jordan Poulter, Rachel Fairbanks, Misha Hancock, Kemi Miner, and Sage Kahayana Torres. Hope I said that correctly. As the opposites, you have Jordan Thompson, Maddie Skinner, Olivia Babcock, Steph Samity, and Kendall Kipp. In the Libero, you have Lexi Rodriguez, Morgan Hentz, Elena Scott, and Alego Ogilvy. Down the middle, you have Anna Hall, Cheka Obogu, Dana Retke, Asia O'Neill, Molly McCage, Sammy Francis, and Anna Dodson. And down on the outside, you have Tori Stafford, Avery Skinner, Sarah Franklin, Kara Halleck, who was formerly known as Kara Bajema, so that's one thing to take note of, Simone Lee Wank, Logan Eggleston, Maddie Kubik, Katie Baird, and Claire Hoffman. That is the 30-person list for the 2026 VNL. Now, before we really jump into it, we're going to have to talk about some of the players who aren't there, of course. There's no Kalia Lanier, who had a great year at Milano. And then you're also missing 3 of the middles who competed in last year's VNL finals. No Breon Butler, no Amber Agiadi, and no Tia Jimerson. Now, for Agiadi, who, in my opinion, is clearly one of the best middles in the world right now, she's definitely one of the most impactful. She is injured, and that's why she ended up turning down the spot. But for the other ones, I'm not entirely sure why they aren't on this roster. That's going to be something for me to talk about with Conan on Wednesday. You've also got no Catherine Plummer, who is also going to be rehabbing some injuries as well after a long pro season in Europe. And then you're also missing Jenna Gray, who is the best setter in the Brazilian league. And then a lot of noise out there about no Mia Tuaniga, who was the best setter in the MLV this year for Indy. But past that, you've got some really good returning players. Jordan Thompson, first and foremost. She is going to be one of the centerpieces of this offense, and I'm sure they are very, very happy to have her back in the red, white, and blue. You've also got Simone Lee, who I am so excited to see. We haven't seen her on the national team since all the way back in 2018. And I know if you're American, you may have forgotten about her, but she has been absolutely balling overseas for the past couple of years. Hancock is making her return to the roster as well, and so is Kara Bajema. Or Caraholic as we see on this roster. And then you've also got a few players who are going to be joining the VNL roster for the first time, but some players that I'm excited to see are Kendall Kipp, Elena Scott, and Cami Minor. Now, let's jump into breaking down this roster a little bit, starting with the setters. Jordan Poulter was the number one option last year throughout the World Championships, and I think she will continue to be this year. I think she had a super strong year playing for Salt Lake City. I really don't think they make the final without her, especially some of the injuries that team went throughout this year. And I think she's just hands down the best option this team has and could arguably be the captain for this team moving forward as well. Now, Misha Hancock is returning to the roster, but she did suffer a bit of a neck injury while playing for Houston this year. We saw her come back into the swing of things towards the end of the season, but I'm wondering if because of all that and just the grind that VNL is, we may not see her as much because especially like a big part of Hancock's game is her serving. And if you've got a neck injury, you really can't crush balls from the baseline like we're used to seeing her do. So I'm wondering if maybe she won't play as much throughout the course of the VNL. And that will potentially open up some things for another athlete to kind of come in there and get some reps and maybe compete for that backup setter spot. Sage Kahayanaya Torres was the starting setter for the majority of the VNL last year and was Poulter's backup at the finals and at the World Championships. And I thought she did a pretty good job. However, there is a lot of questions surrounding her because she was essentially dropped from League One this year after having played in the league last year and then wasn't even a starter for her Grand Rapids team coming in off the bench all season. So there's kind of a lot of noise around her having made that roster. And I'm interested to see if she's going to be getting any playing time this year at all, especially because I think there's a lot of upside to the other two setters. Rachel Fairbanks is coming off a fantastic season with Atlanta. She was tied for second overall in assists, and she was also second in setters efficiency throughout the season. I'm also really interested in seeing Cami Minor on this roster for the first time. Minor has been the backup for Milano in the Lega Volley Femminile this year, and obviously she had a great career at Stanford, but I think for her, getting reps with one of the best teams in the world, playing with some of the best players in the world, we even saw her get some playing time all the way through to the finals. Like, I'm really interested to see how that experience has molded her and changed her a little bit. So I'm really excited to see what she's going to look like in a Team USA uniform and how much playing time she's actually going to get. Next up, we have the outside hitters, and I think there is a big step up from last year just in terms of depth, talent, and experience. And for me, it all starts with that woman right there, Avery Skinner. I think she really took a step forward this year. She moved from Chieri to Scandicci, where she was on one of the best teams in the world, and she had to perform and play with that pressure that did end up with them winning the Club World Championships, upsetting Corneliano in the finals back in December. And now, on the surface, it may look like she may not have had as good of a season because her point totals went down. However, that's also because she was playing opposite Ekaterina Antropova and was no longer the number one offensive option on her team. Because everywhere else you look, pretty much her numbers went up. Her hitting percentage went up and her efficiency went up as well. She had the fourth highest efficiency among outside hitters in the LVF this season, only behind Gabi, Zhu Ting, and Kalia Lanier. So that's a really good sign for American fans. And she also improved her passing numbers from last year too. So year upon year in the LVF, she has just improved her numbers time and time again. And I think that's just really positive for this American team. And she's really starting to prove she's one of the best outside hitters in the world. And then I honestly think getting Simone Lee back on this roster is one of the biggest moves for the U.S. And the U.S. always has troubles finding well-rounded six rotation players, as you would call them, just because of the NCAA rules and the inclusion of DSs, right? You don't have a lot of six rotation players who attack and pass. And Simone Lee can do exactly that. And this is a journey woman who has played in a lot of different leagues. She's played in Italy, she's played in Turkey, she's played in Germany, she's played in Japan, and most recently she's playing in Brazil, where she was the top scorer in the league and one of the best outside hitters in the league as well. And even when you go back last year to when she was playing in the LVF, she had a massive season. She helped lead Valafolia to one of their best results ever. And she was the highest scoring left side in the Italian league as well back in 2024, 2025. I love the way that Simone Lee plays. She plays aggressive offensively. She's just super solid all around. She can hit in system. She can hit out of system. She passes pretty well. And I think she is going to be a really good addition just in terms of depth for this Team USA team. And honestly, I think she's going to start alongside Skinner. She just has that experience and the understanding of international volleyball. She's literally played all around the world, and that is going to be a huge advantage for Team USA. Another player who I think could have an impact is Kara Bajema or Kara Hollick. I always get mixed up when women change their name. I really think they should just stick with their original names when playing sports, but that's just my own opinion. Bajema is a player who has won a Champions League before, and she knows how to play with the best. She's also coming off a year in Turkey where she led the league in blocks per set. And I think that's a really big thing to have from a left side hitter in a current volleyball meta where a lot of teams are right side dominant. And in Turkey, she's playing against some of the best opposites in the world. Past that, of course, you have Logan Eggleston, who's coming off a really good season in LOVB. She was the fourth best scorer in the league this year. And she also led the league in serving, both in aces and in average pass efficiency from the opposite team. So I think Eggleston will be a huge person to have on this team just to add a little bit of edge, and especially in system, she's one of the best in system scorers as well. I'm really interested to see how Sarah Franklin does on this team as well, because last year she played in League One. This year she went and played alongside Skinner for Scandici, and even though she was coming in off the bench, I actually thought she had a pretty solid year. There was at times where she looked pretty good offensively. We know that she's steady in service. Sometimes maybe struggles to score a little bit, but I thought she did a pretty good job, and I'm interested to see what that experience looks like for her back in a Team USA jersey. And then finally, you have Claire Hoffman and Maddie Banks, both of whom were among the best passers in the LOVB this year. So they're going to be brought in to really settle down that serve receive at times on the left side. As I said before, I think Skinner and Lee are going to be the starters, but past that, I think we're going to have some really interesting battles to fill out the rest of that lineup for potentially the VNL finals. Now looking at the middles, and once again, just like for the setters and the left sides, you've got an obvious number one option in Checo Bogo. She's an Olympic champion. She's just coming off winning another Champions League and a Turkish league with Vakif Bank. And, I don't think there's any doubt she's one of the best middles in the world. But the middle position for Team USA this year has a lot of turnover. I said 3 of their middles who competed for them at the VNL finals last year and at the World Championships are not on this roster. So that's leaving a lot of openings for other players. I do think not having Amber Agility is an absolute big blow. I thought she was a huge impact player for the US last summer and in the World Championships. And she was honestly one of the most impactful players in the LVF at the beginning of the year too, when she was playing for Novara. She was statistically the best middle in the league when she came over. And once again, statistically, she was one of the best middles in the LOVB when she came back to play in the US this year as well. But one of the other statistical best players in the LOVB this year is Asia O'Neill. And I think she's going to have a huge opportunity to really make her mark and potentially earn her spot, and maybe even a starting spot, depending on how things break down this year at the VNL. She was second overall in blocks in League One, and then also led all middle attackers in kills this season. So we know she can get it done at the net, both offensively and defensively. And I'm really looking for her to have a breakout year at the VNL. But I think it's going to be tough. You've got Dana Retke, who is a player who played last year. She is coming off another good season in Turkey, where she went to the Champions League finals with Zashibashi. She was fourth in the Sultanlar Ligi in blocks, and then also hit a 56% with a 50% efficiency. In the regular season this year in the Turkish league, she only made 22 errors, like just straight up hitting errors and times she was blocked combined, which is huge because she started pretty much every single match for her team. She's one of the most imposing players in women's volleyball at basically 6'6", and I think she's really coming along nicely. But I don't think you can miss out on Anna Dodson either. Dodson was the 3rd highest scoring middle in Italy this year for Monviso, and I'm interested to see how she fits into the mix. The only thing is she only averaged about 0.33 blocks per set. And that's something you're really going to need to get better at if you want to play at that international level. Now, this is no shade to Sammy Francis, but I don't really know how she's on this roster over Breon Butler. Francis played the SV League, the Japanese Women's League, and Breon Butler led the entire league in blocking, averaging 0.92 blocks per set. And Francis was still pretty good too. She was sixth, but only averaged 0.66 blocks per set. And it was the same thing in hitting. Butler was third in the league in hitting percentage, averaging a 48.3%, while Francis was 11th, averaging a 45.3. And in all fairness, I really didn't watch any of the SV League. I watched way more LOVB and MLV than I did the SV League. But it's interesting to see the differences in those stats, and especially since Breon Butler is a Texas girl and everyone out there is crying that there's basically Texas Nepo babies all over this roster, you'd be surprised and would have thought that Butler would have been picked. Now, moving on to the liberos, Morgan Hentz was the number one libero on this roster by the end of the year, and I don't think anyone can doubt that. She led the MLV in digs this year with 471, but I'm wondering if her number one starting spot is absolutely guaranteed. I think the starting libero position is maybe the most available position. In every other spot, you've got returning Olympians who are there to kind of lead the way. The libero is that one spot that isn't. Of course, Justine Wong-Laurentez is on mat leave right now, and we don't know if we're going to see her in a Team USA jersey again. So I think there's going to be a lot of fierce competition for this libero position. I know average fans are going to want Lexi Rodriguez out there. She's one of the biggest names in volleyball. And, seeing a lot of comments, whether it's in the Discord or on social media, that maybe she didn't have the best season in League One, but she's also the only libero on this list in League One. And while her serve receive isn't necessarily there, she was fourth in the league in digs, and League One also has a create stat, which is the percentage of digs you make that turn into an attack. And she was fifth in the league for that stat as well. So defensively, she can be relied upon. Now, it's really too bad the MLV doesn't stat serve receive at all, and if they do, they don't show it online, so I can't really say anything about any of these other players. All I know is that Alana Ogilvie actually led the league in digs per set with 4 digs per set over the course of the season for Omaha. Hence averaged 3.89 digs per set, and Alana Scott averaged 3.4 digs per set for Indy. But I honestly think that this position is going to be one of the most hotly contested, and I'm really interested to see who gets the shot and when they get the shot throughout this VNL this summer. And finally, we get to the opposites. And once again, the queen is returning, and there's no doubt Jordan Thompson is the number one option. She's coming off an MVP season in LOVB. She absolutely dominated the league in scoring as well. And I just think it's a no-brainer. She is going to be the centerpiece of this Team USA offense. But after Thompson, I think there's some fierce competition for that backup spot. Of course, you've got Madison Skinner, who was the second best scorer in LOVB this year, and she was basically the number one option all throughout the VNL and through the World Championships last year. In general, I say Madison Skinner is a big game player. We didn't necessarily see it in the quarterfinals against Turkey at the World Championships last year, but look how many trophies she's won. Back-to-back League One championships. She won in college as well. This is a player who knows how to win and knows how to show up at the big times. You got Steph Samity, who's back after another big year in Japan, and I know she's signed for MLV Minnesota next year, but once again, she dropped over 800 points in the Japanese League this year. And while mostly coming in off the bench at the World Championships for Team USA, she was actually low-key one of their most efficient players. So I'm wondering if she's going to get another shot out there as well. But most importantly, I think you have Kendall Kipp coming, and Kipp was huge. Kipp had a monster season in Italy where she was one of the top scorers in the league. She was the 7th best scorer in the league. She scored something like 471 points, and she was also the 3rd best blocker among opposite hitters. So I really think she's going to start competing with Skinner and with Samity for that backup role, and may even push Thompson to get some minutes as the starter for Team USA. And then finally, you have Olivia Babcock rounding out this roster. She's the youngest player on this roster, the only one still actively in the NCAA, but for good reason. She's the back-to-back AVCA Player of the Year, and a lot of people see her as the future. And I really like this move. I think Team USA should push more and more and more to get younger players into this gym, right? We see teams like China who have 16-year-olds out there playing. Italy is going to be fielding a bunch of 19, 20-year-olds as well. So Team USA needs to push to get younger as well. And Olivia Babcock is the perfect person to do that with. We saw her sparingly last year. She only scored something like 20 points over the course of just a few matches for Team USA. So I'm hoping she's going to get a little bit more of a shot, especially because she is going to be a little fresher, having finished her season in December and hasn't been playing professionally over the past number of months like the rest of these athletes. Now, past what's going on the court, I think a lot of fans, including me, are really interested to see how Eric Sullivan manages this roster. Now, I feel like he's come under a lot of fire over the past year about like the roster that he picked last year. But let's be honest, this is USA women's volleyball, especially at the NCAA level. There's a lot of eyes on it and people have a lot of biases and a lot of favorites. And then there's also such a huge base of players to be able to pick one. So the margin of error between player to player and the margin of difference is so small. For me, I'm really interested to see what the mix of the roster is going to look like week in and week out. Is it going to be rocking with the same, veteran style roster, or is it kind of going to intermingle as they travel from location to location in the VNL? And then within that roster week per week, is he going to be riding the same players, or are we going to see different mixes on the court? Are we going to see all 30 of these players, or will he limit it to more of like a 20-player rotation week in and week out? Will their style of play continue? Right? The US plays somewhat of a different style than the rest of the world. Some think they maybe try to run it too fast. Maybe they try to run too much left side offense. Hopefully the return of Jordan Thompson will help mend that. But the current meta of women's volleyball internationally is you have to have an elite opposite to be able to win. All of the top trophies in the world, all the top leagues, internationally, Champions League, whatever it is, have been won by essentially 5 opposites in the world. Now, none of them are American, none of them are Jordan Thompson, but can the American style of play thrive in what is just a different volleyball landscape than it was just a few years ago? Now, the reality for this American team is that the VNL is the only real competition for them. So I think they're really going to put all their cards in to do as much work over the course of the 3 weeks and then get to the finals and see if they can make something happen at the finals, right? There's only 2 competitions this year. It's the VNL and then the Continental Championships. And the reality is the NORCECA Championships aren't important for this American team. The only reason they are important for anyone right now is to qualify for the Olympics, and they've already done that. And furthermore, there's no elite teams to compete with the US, right? No offense to my Canadian team in the Dominican Republic. They just don't compete at that same level as the USA is looking for. They're looking for competition against Italy, against Turkey, against China, against Brazil, against Poland, against these elite teams who are looking to win world championships and win the Olympics. So I honestly don't know if they're even going to be bothered to bring a top team to the NORCECA Championships at the end of the summer. I honestly wouldn't be surprised if we just saw a younger group of athletes who are going to go out there and get some experience. Past that, the message for USA fans this year is once again, patience. You're already qualified for the Olympics. It doesn't matter. Everything is building to be able to defend your home court in LA in 2028. And we're not even halfway there yet. That being said, with this roster, I don't see why the US shouldn't be competing for at least top 4 at the VNL. You're realistically only missing 2, 3, maybe 4 players who are going to be on that final roster come the World Championships next summer, come the Olympics in 2028. So you're not that far off. And depending on what other countries bring, it might actually be one of the more veteran rosters out there, right? We've already seen that Italy isn't going to be bringing their top guns. They're going to be going more to the developmental side. So we're going to have to see what countries like Turkey, like Brazil, and like Poland do over the course of this VNL. And if they start going the way of Italy and just running with a younger roster, I really think the US has a good shot to go out and win it all. But if they don't, or if they drop some stinkers down the line, it doesn't matter. It's all going to be part of the process. That's like that win now mentality doesn't need to be part of the equation right now for Team USA. Okay? I know you guys want to win everything. That's part of the reason why you do win quite a bit. But right now, it's not that important. And getting players on board, learning the style of play, and kind of transitioning to a new generation of American players is what is needed right now. 2027 is when things start to get real and when this team really needs to start showing they can win. How they do at the VNL in 2027 and the World Championships in 2027 is going to be one of those really big indicators, just how good this Team USA is. But it really doesn't matter all that much in 2026. So if they're not the best just yet, just relax, take a deep breath, grab a seat, and just enjoy the ride, because you are in a great spot right now. You're already qualified and you're the only team in the world that gets to say that. So just enjoy it and enjoy the VNL.